So hi everyone, welcome to my art desk in my art studio in the south of England in Devon. And I pulled out a couple of my art journals or sketchbooks, as some people like to refer to them. And emphasize again how important it is as an artist to keep sketchbooks and how it can really support your creative growth and development, as well as your personal development and your kind of mental health as well, or so I have personally experienced. And so today for our little session, I wanted to demonstrate how I create quirky, happy houses sometimes in my journal. I also do them on sometimes on a larger piece of paper, which I think I showed you earlier when I was just talking to Karen. So here's an example of the quirky houses. Okay. So here's an example of doing happy houses on a large piece of paper. And if you're with me in on Lifebook, then you would have seen me create this painting. But today I'm going to do a much smaller version of this in one of my sketchbooks or journals, and I wanted to talk to you about the meditative and cathartic impact that doing artwork like that can have, because these are simple. This is a simple, well, I say simple, it probably looks a little bit simpler than it actually is, but it's still simpler than, let's say, doing a face. So just to give you a couple of examples, so I have, actually not in this one. So when we work small, we can do, like, so here's an example of more cute little houses that you can do. The cool thing about these type of drawings is that they don't require a lot of thinking, and they do require you to do repetitive work in terms of line work and layering of paint and shading. And when you do repetitive work, even those of you who do Zen doodles or Zentangles, is it mandalas and things like that, will know the effect that repetitive line work or that type of art making can have on the mind. It can really still the mind. You can become present to yourself. That mindfulness that I was discussing earlier with Karen can really come to the forefront, where you can really notice what is happening inside your body, what you might be needing and feeling in that moment in time. So I really enjoy doing these types of artwork as a way to support my mindfulness practice and being in touch with myself practice. That's what I like to use these kind of drawings for. I mean, all art, I must say, does that for me. This is something that my beautiful child did. So all artwork has that effect on me anyway, but I find that with more simplistic work, so this is, for instance, less simplistic, it's a little bit more in-depth and complex, but so with more simplistic work, here's another houses one, it can really, really help me get into the zone, a calm space, and just become really, really present to the now. Okay, so I've given you a couple of examples of how I do these little these little houses. I might actually do one in a small journal like that. I'll also show you. Oh, I may have shown you that in the previous. Is that in here? No, sorry. I have so many sketchbooks, and I don't always work in them consecutively, which creates this problem that I can't always find. Alright, sorry, the one that I showed you earlier when I was talking to Karen. Here comes the sun. Oops. Probably in here. The one I've had a peek in all my stuff. Here we go. There's another example. Okay. What have I got in here? This is an older one. There's an older one. Okay, so we're going to do something like this, but I'm probably going to work in a smaller journal, because surprisingly so, a page like this looks super straightforward, right? But it takes longer than you think it does, because it requires a lot of fiddly-piddly work, detail, And yeah, don't be fooled by the simple look of it. It's actually more complex than that. Okay, so before we start, I'll just talk about the supplies I usually use. So this is a mix of either, so whatever you have on hand that is a water-soluble type paint. So you can either have watercolor paint, you can use a watercolor crayon, maybe something like a Tombow markers. I was recently introduced to Arteza and they sent me very kindly some of their brushes. You can use inks like Dilutions inks or these kind of Jane Davenport inks. What else do I sometimes use? So what I said, Tombow, watercolor paint, watercolor crayons. Oh yeah, and then I do tend to also use some color pencils that are not water soluble later on to add some shading. So I like using Prismacolor, but you can also use actually Luminance. I have a couple of different brands. This is a Luminance one. I also have Prismacolor. And then what is this? And then I, as a final step, usually use Posca pen. This is a paint marker and a white one as well to add all the tiny little details. Although see in here, I didn't use a black one, I can see. So I might avoid a black one this time. Sometimes I use black ones. So in here, you can see here. Oh, that's back here, I think, again. Yeah. So here I used black outline around the houses, but not in the other ones. And the other thing you want to start thinking about is you can see here that in this scene I decided on only sort of 2 shades of 2 colors, so it's shades of blue and shades of pink and red. In this one there are more than 2 colors, so I have purples, blues, oranges, and purples and pinks as well. So I find that these can be real fun and bright and lively, but they are also more, yeah, exactly that, more lively, while these are more soothing, like calmer. They calm me down more. So depending on what you want to achieve, if you perhaps want to create an energizing page, go for more colors than just the 2. If you want to create a calming down, a grounding page, maybe choose 2 colors and shades thereof. I will likely do something similar to this. I really like this color combination, reds and blues, and yes, and you can see on here, which again, if you've been on Livebook with me, you'll have seen me create this because this was part of my Livebook session here. So here I just tried out some color swatches just to see what color combinations I liked, and then added up probably with this. So, and then the only little tip I'll give you regarding drawing these houses and shading them is so they're very simple. I do very simple shapes. You can make them obviously much more complex should you want to, but for the simplicity of this and for the effect that it can have, the calming down, and what I like about this is I choose to do it less complex so that I can kind of not be in my head too much. So I'm trying to come out of my head and more into my body by creating simple shapes like so. So this is kind of my simplest sort of shape. And you can start that off like that and then decide, do I want the house that way or that way? And there you go. And then when I work in my journal, when I do these houses, I then try to I like quirkiness. That is just sort of my style. So I'll build quirky houses around each other. So as if it's sort of a busy cityscape, and you can do little roads and things like that. And you can go, let your imagination take you where it wants to go. You can add little flowers as well. You know, like all sorts of little details can be added to your page. But mostly you're trying to stack houses in front and behind each other. And you try to vary the house shapes and sizes and make them nice and quirky. You can also decide to make some just front facing so that you don't add the other side of the house. The other side of the house, so don't make it visible. I also like to do sometimes like little things like towers, as if I've got a castle here. Maybe this house is standing that way. You can build little extensions to a house. So for instance here I might go like that on that one. Of course, and then eventually windows are going to come, and doors and alleyways, awnings, everything. Awning actually is quite a cool idea. There you go. An awning that might need to... or balconies. You can do anything you like. But the point is, I mean, if you're doing balconies and stuff, that's quite fun, but it becomes more complex again. Up to you. For me, like I said, it's the simplicity of it means that I can become really still. Okay, so I will time-lapse this, the rest of this session. You can see me create this, as we can't make the session too long for this summit. I hope you enjoy the creation of my little houses session, and I hope it helps you to ground and be still as well. In fact, I do recommend you take a moment before you start and take a couple of deep breaths, maybe 2 or 3, and just sort of zone into yourself, close your eyes and really focus inwards before you start. You may even have a little ritual. I at times have a couple of crystals in front of me. I may pull a card of some sorts to guide me and take 3 minutes or so to do some deep breathing and scanning my body. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm working, the paper I'm working on is in, these are Robertson watercolor sketchbooks that are sadly have been discontinued, but you can find the paper. The paper is, I need the other one. It's 140 pounds of watercolor paper, 140 pounds hot pressed watercolor paper by Saunders and Waterford if you wanted the exact paper. You do not need the exact paper. You can use other paper, it's entirely fine. However, I wouldn't compromise on the weight of it. So 140 pounds is strong and good for this type of waterwork. Okay, so let's get started. I hope you enjoyed. Oh, and if you enjoyed this session, please do come and check me out. I'm Tamara Laporte, and I live online at www.willowing.org, where I run lots of art classes. So I hope to see you there. Thank you for being here with me today. everyone. So here's my little sketchbook page with some lovely, quirky, happy houses. As you can see, I stuck with my sort of higgledy-piggledy, quirky, wonky shapes and angles, which is my favorite way of working. And I try to work with kind of, I worked with layering, shading of shades of color to layer. This is what I chose to be sort of the darker side. So try to be suggestive about the darker and the lighter areas. I'm not a perfectionist, nor am I trying to do super create any realism. In fact, I quite like it when things make no sense. A bit like I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Escher, who's a great Dutch illustrator. Or late, I think he's gone by now. And he did these kind of quirky illustrations that looked like they made sense, but actually perspective-wise they didn't. And it really plays with your mind, kind of optical illusions. And my stuff is nothing like it, but it reminds me of that. I like kind of playing with kind of bending the rules of reality or logic, if you will. And I enjoy quirkiness and cuteness. Hence my houses get little things like butterfly wings or have hearts and stars hanging off them. Also, I added some little kind of floral flower impressions on these little two hills, and in the sky I added some stars and hearts and sparkles to liven up the entire page a little bit. Yeah, and I think that's it. So I've loved creating that. This, you may have noticed as well that as you go through a process like this, which is, like I said before, so meditative, that you've become more present to your experience, to your now. You may even have noticed some, sensations in your body, any feelings or needs that might be present for you. You may have all become aware of, which is what I love about the sketching and drawing process. So, I hope you enjoyed this little session with me, Tamara Laporte from Willowing Arts. And I hope to see you on any of my other courses or just around on Facebook or on Instagram. I hope to see you there, and I also hope you enjoy the free gift that I've included today for the summit. Many thanks, everyone. Have a lovely time on the summit, and I hope to see you around on the internets. Bye-bye.